Hi, everybody.
Hey, Paloma, can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Nathan. How are you?
Doing well. I'm trying a new headset, so let me know if my audio isn't clear.
No, it's perfect.
Excellent.
Yeah, I'm very excited to do this webinar.
Happy to be here.
Um, do you need to share the screen?
Yes, give me just 1 second to get it set up.
Yeah, I'll make you. I don't know if I need to make you the host.
There it goes.
Okay, it looks like we might have a full house today, so that's great.
Excellent.
Let's just give
Let
it
me-
a couple of minutes. Nathan, you're in Gainesville, right?
Yes, that is correct.
Nice.
And I'm not sure how the webinars normally go, but usually at our seminars in our department, we're very used to people interrupting with questions, especially if there's something that's not clear. So if anyone has questions at any point, feel free to interrupt me or post them in the chat.
Perfect. Um, I guess we can give a couple more minutes.
Hi, Paloma.
Hi. Hi. It's always nice to see people from all over the state. I think we can start and people might be we'll start filtering in as we go. Um, well, everybody, welcome. My name is Paloma Mejia. I'm the executive director for the Florida Brewers Guild. We do webinars monthly. For those of you that don't know, follow us on our social media, and if you're a member, you'll see the newsletters. This month, I'm very excited to have Nathan Palardy from the University of Florida. Market research is one of my backgrounds too, so he's gonna be here talking about the market research for beer consumers in Florida. Nathan is the assistant professor and extension economist in the Food and Resource Economist department at the University of Florida. So Nathan, whenever you want to go.
Thank you for that introduction, Paloma. Yeah, as Paloma just mentioned, I'm an assistant professor, extension economist, food and resource economics at the University of Florida. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about consumer preferences and purchasing habits specific to the Florida context. If you attended the annual conference at the Florida Brewers Guild, this will be a lot of that same, along the same line of research that the team here is doing, with a few new things sprinkled throughout. So if you didn't catch it at the annual conference, this is a great chance to see what was presented there. So before I begin, I just want to acknowledge the rest of the research team that helped generate all of this information, including two PhD students, Candace Lance and Mary Hambarian, as well as the contributions of Dr. O'Revery, Dr. Lai, and Dr. Cassis. So why examine the preferences and purchasing habits of Florida consumers? As I'm sure everyone here is aware, Florida is a very unique state, especially in the regional context. Florida is hotter than most states in the US, and certainly more humid. It has a older population, a proportion of the population that is larger, that is older, and that population is also rapidly growing. Florida is one of the fastest growing states in the union. And it's also the third largest by population, having overtaken New York. Florida is culturally diverse as you go north to south and east to west, meaning you have a lot of different demographics with different consumption preferences, and it is also regionally distinct. Florida is unlike any southern state within that southern region. So for all these reasons, we may want to focus specifically on Florida when we're considering trends in purchasing habits, rather than focusing at the national level or even at the regional level. So our goal as researchers are to provide Florida craft breweries and hop growers with insight into the local market, so that these businesses can help refine their marketing strategies and reach the consumers that they want to target most effectively. The reason we are focusing on the craft sector is that small craft breweries, which comprises the bulk of breweries in the craft world, often lack the capacity to conduct extensive market research on their own, simply because market research is often just very time intensive and expensive to do if you're hiring someone to do it outside of your business. So we're trying to bridge that information gap and provide information that isn't that isn't readily available. The other reason is that national organizations that produce market research for breweries often focus at the national level because that is their audience. While groups like the Brewers Association do provide market research, they tend to focus at a higher level than the state-specific context. Now, that being said, a month after I gave this presentation at the Florida Brewers Guild, the Brewers Association actually came out with an article focused on regional and state trends. I think this article is really complementary to the work that we're doing at UF. We focus on different things than what the Brewers Association looks at, but they're all interrelated with each other. So just some highlights from that Brewers Association article. They found that IPAs account for 54% of craft sales in Florida. That's relevant to breweries in terms of deciding what your product rotation is going to be and how much of that product rotation is going to be made up of IPAs, and also related to breweries in terms of your production capacity constraints when you're thinking about, do I have room to bring in another beer? What is that beer going to be? Is it going to be an IPA or a non-IPA? I'm not saying don't brew IPAs because, as brewers, your market niche way better than I ever could. It's just something to consider when you're planning out what beer your brewing schedule and how much you're going to brew of each specific style, based on the fact that 54% of craft sales were in the IPA category in Florida. This is about middle of the road for the US as well. I believe Wisconsin only had 29% of craft sales in the IPA category, while Connecticut had 69% of craft sales in the IPA category. So Florida is somewhere in the middle there. Additionally, Florida stood out because the overall craft production in the state grew by 5.3% last year. This came at a time when most other states experienced a decline. Nationally, craft production declined by about 1%. When we break that out by brewery type, we see that the growth was largely driven by regional breweries increasing production in Florida. This only includes members of the Brewers Association, by the way. So if the brewery's not a member of the Brewers Association, this was not included in their data. But regional breweries increased production. This is what's driving this growth, but brew pubs and tap rooms also increased production. Microbreweries in Florida actually decreased just a bit in terms of overall production. Compared to the entire southern region, Florida, at least in terms of production, is doing better. Brew pubs were the only category that saw growth last year in terms of production. And I took a quick look at one of our neighbors, Georgia. Overall production in Georgia declined by 10% last year. So that kind of gives you an idea of how Florida is faring compared to at least some of its closest neighbors. If you're kind of a data nerd like me, I encourage you to check out the article. The Brewers Association does a great write-up of this, and they also provide all of the data that they use to compile this information, so you can actually dig through that data yourself. I will be providing these slides to Paloma afterwards so that they can be sent out to all the members. All right, with that out of the way, how can we as researchers help breweries refine their marketing strategies? The first way we try to do this is by characterizing the purchasing and consumption habits of various consumer segments in Florida, focusing specifically on the trends and preferences of the Florida consumer. The second way is by quantifying the willingness to pay for local ingredients and sustainability, specifically B Corp labeling. The reason we do this is that advertising the use of local ingredients and advertising various sustainability labels is a differentiation strategy that we're seeing breweries already implement in the marketplace. For example, Shorts Brewing Company brews Pure Michigan Summer IPA. This is a 100% Michigan ingredient IPA made by Shorts Brewing Company. This is a differentiation strategy that they're using, and I believe this is sold for about $12.99 a six-pack last I checked. Other breweries like Creature Comforts and North Coast display the certified B Corp label. B Corp label signals to consumers that a company is committed to a certain level of social and environmental business practices, signaling to consumer kind of a commitment to sustainability in various dimensions. The reason why we're looking at the willingness to pay for these is to help breweries assess whether these strategies are viable for them, because both of these differentiation strategies are associated with higher cost. Using local ingredients is probably going to cost the brewery more than buying whatever the cheapest ingredients for a given quality that are available. So these strategies are costly. Adding a label, getting certified is costly. What is the payoff for breweries? Is this going to make economic sense for them? So both of these objectives were accomplished using a survey of 583 beer consumers. The survey was administered online in the summer and fall of 2023. Respondents must have purchased beer in the previous 6 months. We are focusing exclusively on people who somewhat regularly consume beer because we felt like they would be able to answer our questions on beer preferences in a way that is more accurate and more reflective of Florida beer consumers, as opposed to including a general population survey. Our sample was somewhat older, wealthier, and more likely to have a college degree and more likely to be female compared to the general population in Florida. I have a full report on this coming out, and a detailed comparison with the Florida population will be included in that. I also have a slide that at the end of this presentation, if anybody's curious about how our sample deviated from the general population, happy to do that. In general, it was pretty close, but it was slightly different in some aspects, which is expected because, again, it was a survey of beer consumers, not of the overall population. So first, I'm going to go over a breakdown of the purchasing and consumption habits. We found that the majority of beer consumers consume beer frequently. This may sound like a given, but we actually were not sure whether the majority of beer consumers in Florida would be more once-a-month consumers or if they would be consuming beers more frequently. Good news is that the majority of beer consumers, or 28% of our sample, consume beer 2 to 6 times a week. And when you combine these three columns, more than half of our sample consumed beer at least once a week. This compares to this follows somewhat closely with overall alcohol consumption, which are these yellow columns. Beer consumption is in these orange columns to the right. Only 14% of our samples said that they consumed beer less than once a month. 35% of our respondents said that they buy craft beer at least half the time when we're looking at terms of purchasing. So we're shifting from consumption to purchasing frequency. And only 28% of our samples said that they never purchase craft beer. This is slightly less than the number of respondents who said that they, this is, by the way, when you go to purchase craft beer, how often do you purchase craft? 51% of our samples said that they purchased large domestics at least half the time, whereas 40% of our samples said that they purchased imports half the time. This aligns with Brewers Association data saying that these two categories are comprise the largest share of the craft beer market. So we would expect these to be somewhat more than craft, considering that craft is about 20% of overall beer expenditures nationally. Finally, craft is purchased more often than hard seltzer. Only 22% of our samples said they purchase hard seltzer half the time. 50% of our samples said that they never purchase craft. Hard seltzer is not beer, but we looked at it anyways because we were curious. There had been a lot of talk about hard seltzer potentially being a substitute for craft beer. And what we're seeing is we're seeing occasional purchases of hard seltzer, but we don't see any indication that it's going to replace craft anytime soon. We also found similar craft purchasing habits for men and women. About 25% of men said that they never purchase craft, and compared to about 30% of women. And for the other categories, it was more or less equal. This aligns again with Brewers Association data saying that we are approaching parity between male and female consumers, meaning that male and female consumers are purchasing and consuming beer at increasingly equal amounts. It's not quite equal, but it is approaching that parity point. Which indicates that women are going to become more increasingly important consumers over time, and that craft is continuing to expand its market beyond its kind of core male demographic. Craft purchase frequency tends to decline as the generation gets older, the generation of consumer gets older. So when comparing millennials and Gen X, baby boomers were much more likely to say that they never purchased craft beers. 34% of baby boomers said that they never purchased craft. However, we see that millennials purchase craft beer much more frequently than Gen X. Gen X were much more likely to say that they only sometimes purchase craft, while millennials were much more likely to say that they purchase craft beer at least half the time. This likely doesn't come as a surprise to any of you. Millennials have long been driving the craft market. The reason we don't include Gen Z in here is simply because we did not have enough responses from Gen Z consumers. We only had about 3 responses from people making up that demographic, so we don't extrapolate, we don't present data on them because we simply did not collect information for it to be representative of that demographic. There's a lot of uncertainty as far as what the consumption habits of Gen Z are going to be in regards to craft. We see that craft purchasing frequency peaks at middle to high income when we break it out and break our sample out into various income brackets. What that means is that craft purchasing frequency increases as we go up until we reach about a upper limit of about 150,000, and then we see the purchasing frequency decline again, meaning that the top income bracket is actually purchasing craft beer less than the second highest income bracket. Now, there could be a couple of reasons for that. One is that the higher income respondents in our sample may more likely to be, or they are more likely to be baby boomers. So there's some age correlation with this income. But there's also the fact that as people get more income, they tend to diversify their alcohol consumption more, buying more expensive spirits and wine. So it could be that also the consumers in this upper income bracket, while they're not shifting away from craft completely, they may be substituting other alcohol types in with craft consumption. So that's likely driving some of this patterns that we see here. Now, we also looked at expenditure in addition to purchasing frequency. And what we find is the median craft beer consumer in Florida spends about $30 a month on beer. Now, this is all beer expenditure, so craft only accounts for a portion of this $30. The top 25% of Florida beer consumers spent upward of $60 a month on beer, while the bottom 25% of spenders spent about $15 a month on beer. Again, breaking it out by different demographics, we see that men spend slightly more than women on craft on a monthly basis. The median male craft beer consumer in Florida spent about $30 a month, while the median female consumer spent about $25. And the top 25% of male consumers spent about $75, and the top 25% of female consumers spent at least $50 a month. However, we note that spending is substantial amongst both groups. Millennials tend to spend substantially more than other generations. Again, this probably comes as no surprise. This is something that the Brewers Association has also found, is that millennials are one of the key demographics driving beer. We find that the median millennial in Florida spends about $50 a month on beer, while the top 25% of millennials spend over $100 a month on craft beer. That's a lot. Whereas the bottom 25% spend about $20 a month on beer. Notably, millennials also spend a greater share. Before I move on to baby boomers, millennials are more likely to spend a greater share of their beer dollars on craft, which is likely driving up some of this. We find that millennials spend about twice as much across all of these categories as their corresponding baby boomers. So the median baby boomers spend about $25 a month on on beer. The top 25% of baby boomers spend about $50 a month. However, baby boomers in Florida are 37% of the population and growing. And again, similar with earlier, this is the median and the top 25% are still spending a substantial amount every month on beer. So this is the take-home message is that while they're spending less than millennials, they're still spending a substantial amount. And because they're a large share of the market, if you can tap into the baby boomer market, there's a lot of potential there. And the importance of this is going to vary by brewery location as well as the county that you're in. And for some breweries, that may not be a critical market to capture. For other breweries in the state, depending on the county that you're in and the neighborhood that you're in, this may be an essential market to capture. So there's some potential there. What I'm saying is don't discount this demographic, especially in Florida. When we look at retail outlets, we see that grocery is by far the most popular category for off-premise purchases across all generations, but the degree varies substantially by generation. So 72% of baby boomers said that they usually purchase beer in the grocery channel, compared to only 54% of millennials saying that they usually purchase beer in the grocery channel. This means that the grocery channel is important across all generations, but if you are going to target or if you need to tap into your baby boomers as a part of your consumer base, getting into that grocery channel is essential if you're going to sell beer for consumption at home. We see the exact opposite trend when it comes to convenience stores. This is something that has been growing over time. We see that younger consumers tend to be purchasing more and more beer in the convenience channel. This presents a challenge for craft breweries that the consumers in the convenience channel tend to make purchasing decisions very quickly. On average, a consumer spends less than 4 minutes inside of a convenience store, so they're not browsing the aisles, comparing different six packs. They kind of have an idea when they go in what it is that they're purchasing. Packaging is also a challenge at the convenience channel. 19.2 cans are king in the convenience channel. However, there are breweries that have been successful in making inroads in that area. New Belgium makes a line of 19.2 ounce cans. I believe Sierra Nevada and Stone Brewing do as well. But these are breweries that can leverage their economies of scale and can really push to exert leverage over distributors to market them and get them effectively on convenience store shelves. So just be thinking of that going forward. I suspect Gen X is going to, just based on this trend, is going to be making even more purchasing decisions, more purchases in the convenience channel compared to other generations. And finally, liquor stores remain important across all generations. They're the second most popular category here. So shifting to premiums for local ingredients and CSR labeling. Premiums is just a word. I'm an economist. We use premium as a term to indicate the additional amount that a consumer is willing to pay for a specific trait or attribute. So these premiums were estimated using a choice experiment in which respondents answer a series of purchasing scenarios for a Florida Craft six-pack. I'll have an example of that up in a moment, but each scenario has 3 choices and a no purchase option. The attributes that varied across these were the price, whether or not it had a locally produced adjunct, in this case, blueberries, whether or not the beer had a B Corp label, and whether or not the beer was produced using Florida hops. So here's an example of one of the questions that a respondent would have answered. They're given these 3 options. Each option varies in terms of price. You can see option A is made with local Florida blueberries, does not have a B Corp label, and is made with hops from the Pacific Northwest, whereas option B is made with generic blueberries, does have a B Corp label, and is made with hops from Florida. So they answered 10 of these questions, each respondent did, and that allows us to calculate a premium for each of these attributes. What we found is that Florida blueberries commanded a premium of about 70%. So for a Florida Craft six-pack, a consumer was indicated that they were willing to pay a 70% premium if that six-pack contained beer made with Florida blueberries. A B Corp label had a B Corp label had a premium of $1.71, and a beer made with Florida hops had the highest premium at $1.93. This indicates that Florida hops have a higher premium, almost more than double that of what, say, a Florida adjunct has. So it seems like Florida consumers, all ingredients, in other words, aren't created equal. Florida consumers are willing to pay a greater premium for beer made with Florida hops than for beer made with Florida blueberries. Hopefully, we can do some follow-up research that looks if that premium is consistent across other adjuncts. So we broke this out by generation as with the other data that I presented, and we find a substantial variation in the willingness to pay for each premium across generations. So for example, millennials were willing to pay a premium of about $1.77 for a beer made with Florida six-pack made with Florida blueberries, whereas baby boomers really weren't willing to pay much of a premium at all. So that tells you, based on your target consumer, okay, maybe, even though the premium was 70 cents, if my consumers are primarily millennials, they're still willing to pay $1.77 premium for this adjunct. When we shift to B Corp labeling, we see a less variation between the generations in terms of the premium that they're willing to pay. However, we see that Gen X is willing to pay the highest premium for a B Corp label, followed by baby boomers. Millennials are actually willing to pay slightly less than other generations for a B Corp label. By the way, I should go back a little bit. We as part of our experiment, we did tell consumers, provided them a definition with what a B corporation was, so that the consumers knew what a B corporation was when they were answering prior to answering this question, which may not be entirely reflective of consumers in the marketplace, because consumers obviously aren't provided a definition of what each label means. So this is assuming that consumers are educated on what the label signifies. Finally, for Florida hops, this is the highest premium out of any attribute, and we see almost no variation in the premium across generations. All generations were willing to pay about $1.95, give or take, for the presence of Florida hops. We also looked at regional differences in the willingness to pay for each attributes because breweries are located across the landscape in Florida, right? Florida is a big state. As I mentioned, there's a lot of diversity east, west, and north, south. So we wanted to look at least the 4 largest metro areas and provide some idea of the willingness to pay of Florida beer consumers in each of these metro areas. So we found that Florida blueberries commanded the highest premium in Tampa. Sorry, Tampa commanded the highest premium for Florida blueberries out of the metro areas at $1.14 compared to 29 cents in Jacksonville. However, these premiums, substantial variation here, but these premiums are, not negligible. When it came to B Corp, Miami was willing to pay consumers in Miami were willing to pay the highest premium at $2.08. This ranged down to 94 cents in Orlando. And we see here that metros value different attributes more or less. And when it came to Florida hops, this commanded the highest premium out of any attribute with the exception of Miami, but it's still really close. At $2.02. Consumers in Jacksonville were willing to pay $2.30 more for a craft 6-pack with Florida hops, while consumers in Orlando were willing to pay about $1.63. And our idea here is that we can help breweries tailor their marketing strategies, not just by generation, not just by demographic, but also by location in the state. So key takeaways from this presentation, we find similar purchasing and spending habits among men and women for craft beer. We find that millennials are driving craft sales, especially with that monthly expenditure, but other demographics present opportunities for growth. That's going to vary a lot on the county and the location that you're in. Florida breweries will need to adapt as purchasing shift towards grocery and convenience channels. I mentioned that convenience stores are a challenging outlet, but I'm sure you're all aware groceries present a lot of challenges as well. Shelf space is very limited in both of these channels, and it's really hard to really get your product on the shelf in good placement. Grocery stores have all kind of insurance requirements. That's more on the distributor side of things. But basically, both grocery channels and convenience channels, those are growing in importance, and that's going to be kind of a challenge for craft breweries going forward in terms of reaching consumers and for the off-premise consumption. Substantial premiums for Florida hops and B Corp labeling across generations, but only millennials and Gen X really valued that Florida adjunct. We didn't see much willingness to pay for a Florida adjunct amongst baby boomers. However, baby boomers did value local ingredients in the form of Florida hops. There was substantial variation in the premiums across metro areas as well, but the premiums were substantial, especially for B Corps and Florida hops across all metro areas. So some next steps, the first report containing consumer profiles will be released soon. I said this in August. We were in the copy editing stage of getting that report out. It's being released through UF IFAS. It's still in the copy editing stage. I'm at the point where I might just slip an early copy to the Florida Brewers Guild and ask for forgiveness later because I don't think there's going to be much changes in the copy editing process, and this information has a shelf life, and I want to get it to Florida breweries as quickly as possible. The next report is going to contain more information on Florida, the premiums across the metro areas. This will be the report that follows up on this first report that will be released soon. And we've recently submitted an academic paper looking at premiums across the entire Southeast, and how consumers feel about beer made with Florida hops, not just in Florida, but in Georgia, Alabama, and South Carolina. Our research is only as useful if you all value it. So I would love some feedback in terms of what else you would like to see. Our goal is to produce practical, relevant, and actionable research for Florida breweries. So please tell me, either write to me, tell me right now, reach out to me however you feel comfortable. Tell me what your economic or policy related questions and concerns are, and I'll do my best to find some answer to those. I got some great feedback at the Florida Brewers Guild annual conference looking at how consumers respond to various menu items. There's potential for some really cool analysis there, looking at the design of menus for tap houses, and what draw consumer eyes. There's some eye tracking software and eye tracking consumer research that we could do there. So hopefully I can get a grant to look at that in the future as well. But yeah, let me know. With that, thank you for attending today. I always love talking to breweries working in this space, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you'll have.
Hi, Nathan. That was great. Thank you so much. If anybody has any questions, just go for it. One thing I think it would be interesting to see if what would bring customers to our tap rooms, if there's any special events or releases, or is it the beer? Is it the ambience? Is it live music? Is it food? Maybe the type of research to see what brings customers into the tap rooms, which tap rooms usually make the most money for small breweries rather than selling, exporting. So I'll be interested to see.
Absolutely. I think that's a great idea. And I want to look into that just to make sure I don't retread something to see if there's research already out there. And if
Yeah.
there is, I'm more than happy to share that with you, to see what has been, if other academics have looked at that and found strategies that are more effective than others, I'm happy to share that. And if not, then that's something I could absolutely look into. And of course, tap rooms, yeah, breweries get to capture the entire markup there. I meant to mention this at the beginning. One of the things that got me into craft beer research is in a past lifetime, I actually worked at a brewery myself. I was at Terrapin Brewing Company about a lifetime ago, from about 2011 to about 2014, 2015.
All right. Yeah, I've been there. It's a big
Yeah.
place.
Yes. Old jeans manufacturing plant with a big yard, great outdoor venue. Yeah.
Yeah, let me know. And if you need help, I think we can get also some breweries to share like QR codes to answer surveys if you need more bigger reach. I'm pretty sure it will benefit us too. So
Thank you.
anybody has any questions for Nathan while we have him?
Thank you. That
And
was
feel
great.
free to reach out via email too. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, just saying thank you. Thank you. That was great information.
Thank you, Nathan. I'll have to go back and see some of this. I missed the beginning, but I'll review it later on. Good stuff.
Thank
Are we
you.
gonna get this, Nathan, or is there a way we can get it?
I will
Absolutely.
I will have the video recording saved on the website And I think
Thank
Nathan
you.
said he was gonna share the PowerPoint too, so I'll have that in a newsletter.
Very informative. Thank you, Nathan. Really appreciate that. I did catch it at the conference, but this was even. It was nice to have saw it again, and there was some updates like you mentioned, and maybe some parts that I didn't catch at the conference. So I appreciate it. Thank you for your time. I will write some questions out, and I'll be contacting you. And also, we would be interested in providing any if you want to do any of those research with our tap room. We'd love to help and see what information we can gather for you.
Great, thank you. I look forward to your questions and the willingness to share data. That means a lot, and it's essential for us to get that data to provide quality research to you all. So thank you for that.
Well, if nobody else has any questions, thank you, Nathan. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Don't miss any of our following events. Next week, we have the Freedom for Beer. If you have any questions, feel free to email me, check our website. And again, thank you, everybody.